Oil price hits $60 per barrel, highest in more than 2 months. Central Bank of Nigeria says no going back on cryptocurrencies, says it will continue to protect Nigeria's financial systems from fraudsters. In international news, Trump's second impeachment trial begins today. And in sport, Adamawa United players plead with State Governor Ahmadu Fintiri over abysmal welfare package.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC) has reported 643 new cases of coronavirus in the country on Monday night. This brings to 140,391 the total number of cases in the country. NCDC also reported 6 new deaths from the virus. In Monday's tally, your state recorded the highest figure with 88 infections, while Lagos came behind with 2 fewer cases. The Federal Capital Territory recorded 34 cases. More than 114,500 patients nationwide have recovered and have been discharged. NCDC says there are nearly 25,000 patients still receiving treatment across the country. Some angry Nigerian youths are threatened to hold a fresh protest at the Lekki Tollgate in Lagos if the state government goes through with plans to reopen the toll next Monday. Various hashtags are already flying across all social media platforms. Hashtag Occupy Lekki Tollgate has been trending as #1 across platforms and 3 on Twitter. The youth say the protest will hold on Saturday, 2 days before the state government's planned reopening of the toll plaza. The Lagos State Judicial Panel of Inquiry probed the alleged killing of hashtag EndSARS protesters as approved the reopening of the toll gate. 4 of 9 panel members faulted the report of the forensic experts hired to comb the scene for evidence. The 4 panel members also rejected the application by the Lekki Concession Company, operator of the Lekki toll gate, to take possession of the facility which had been shut down since the probe of the October shooting started. Oil prices rose on Monday to $60 a barrel, the highest in many months. International oil benchmark Brent crude extended its rebound on Monday, hitting the $60 per barrel mark for the first time since the extent of the COVID-19 pandemic became clear. The further rise in oil prices comes amid optimism for a vaccine-led economic recovery and a commitment by the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies to restrain the supply of crude oil. OPEC and its Russia-led allies, a group called OPEC Plus, announced last week there was high compliance among member states to limit supply to prop up prices. The Central Bank of Nigeria says, despite criticisms from different quarters, it will not go back on the ban on the cryptocurrencies exchanges. The Apex Bank says it is determined to protect the country's financial system from activities of fraudsters. The bank also says the directive to banks stays to close accounts of persons or entities involved in cryptocurrency transactions. The central bank said not only are cryptocurrencies issued by unregulated and unlicensed entities, the patrons and users value anonymity, obscurity, and concealment, and there are risk of loss of investment, money laundering, terrorism financing, illicit fund flows, and criminal activities. Civil society organizations under the auspices of Coalition for Constitutional and Electoral Reforms is asking the National Assembly to okay a new legislation that captures electronic transmission of results and the use of technology in the electoral process. This was contained in a statement signed by leaders of CSOs, including Center for Liberty, Next Action, Active Citizenship Advocacy Africa, Raising New Voices, and Younger Africa. The coalition pointed out that Nigerians seek an enduring electoral reform that will address the deficits in the electoral system, namely provision for electronic transmission and publication of results, full biometrics for accreditation, and the need for spending limits on cost of nomination forms. The federal government says there are plans to replace the bank verification number with a national identity number. This announcement was made by the Minister for Communications and Digital Economy, Dr. Issa Pantami, when he led a delegation of chief executive officers on a visit to mobile network operators and a private NIN enrollment center in Abuja. Pantami said the ministry is collaborating with the central bank to ensure citizens with BVNs are automatically provided with NINs. Pantami argued that while BVN was only for account holders with various banks and is a CBN policy, the national identity number is set by law for all Nigerians irrespective of status.
Coming up, African stories. Libya's new interim leadership to steer country to national polls. And later, international news. Trump's second impeachment trial begins today.
You are watching ANN.
Susu is fine. No, she's not crying, oh. We are watching cartoon. Ask grandma, I'm the one that used to take care of Yabo that time. Take your time.
They cry, oh, daddy, oh, daddy, oh.
I will call you back. Your daddy is calling.
Explore without limits. Turn it up on MTN, the reliable data network.
Everybody say.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Libya's rival military factions have expressed satisfaction with the new interim government elected with UN guidance in Geneva last week. They hope the new leadership would help unite the country and guide the country to national polls. Correspondent Adil El Marouki reports.
During the next days, Libya's newly selected prime minister must form his new cabinet. Abdelhamid Dbeiba's government must get the eastern-based parliament's endorsement during the same period. That could be the government's first challenge, as the Speaker of the Parliament's list has just lost to Dbeiba's in Friday's vote. The runoff vote had two final lists, each including a prime minister and 3 presidency council members. The UN, however, has proposed that the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum would be given the power to endorse the new cabinet if the parliament doesn't.
They
approved that mechanism because they fear that the parliament may obstruct for the second time the formation of the government, like what happened back in 2015. Fayez al-Sarraj's government did not, for 5 years, get endorsed by the parliament. This time, they have a backup plan.
Beside the Prime Minister, Friday's vote selected 3 politicians from the south, west and east to form a new presidency council. Libya's interim executive authority must lead the nation to general elections in December. In addition, they must plan for a constitutional referendum while maintaining the current ceasefire. Almost all Libyan factions have been represented in the UN-led selection process. Regional and international powers who have been supporting rival factions in Libya have welcomed the outcomes of Friday's voting. Some Libyan entities, including the Western-based Council of State, has accepted the results.
Before the coronavirus pandemic began, patients of other ailments in Uganda had a system that catered to their medical needs without delay. But the overwhelming force of the pandemic has changed all that, especially for cancer patients in the country who now struggle for treatment. Correspondent Hilary Yosiga reports.
Battling cancer, John Wani is suffering from bone cancer.
He says access to care is still a challenge because of limited resources.
In the hospital, they just prescribe drugs and then tell you to go buy them from a pharmacy. I cannot afford a dose, so I buy half a dose when I get support from well-wishers.
Wani is just one cancer patient among many struggling with the effects of COVID-19. Rebecca Namsis is a breast cancer patient.
We are not working. Our businesses went under, so accessing healthcare is still a challenge for many of us cancer patients.
The most common cancers in Uganda include Kaposi sarcoma, prostate cancer, breast cancer, and cervical cancer. Health workers say COVID-19 restrictions have interrupted treatment plans for many cancer patients, and when treatment is not followed, patients get sicker. The Uganda government is now rolling out testing and treatment services closer to the community.
Yes, say, wait a minute, let us now go lower down. Let us create the regional centers.
Health workers say the number of people seeking care is also steadily rising.
The figure has gone up to 350 per 100,000 population. So as you can see, that is more than even threefold increase in just 10 years, which is a very, very big jump.
But as they bring services closer to the people, patients also want the cost of treatment subsidized.
But my plea is for the government to make a policy that this treatment should be put on a subsidized price or else to be free of charge.
But analysts say this may take time because Uganda, like many other countries, is battling a pandemic which has constrained her resources. That means patients like Wani will have to scrimp and save what little he has to access treatment.
The African Union Summit ended in Ethiopia's capital over the weekend. Normally, Addis Ababa hotels would have been solidly fully booked for such events, but the hospitality sector was counting losses after the summit. Hotels are just about 35% booked as the summit went virtual. Correspondent Koleta Wanjohi has the story.
This time last year, Sam Omala was already busy attending to African Union Summit delegations. Saro Maria, the hotel he manages, is among those that fill up during the summit period. However, this year, the halls are nearly empty.
Basically, on a normal year, we have been, this month and this season, this period, is a very successful period because the rates are usually high for the accommodation. The average daily rates are high, and we usually operate most hotels, and including ours, we are going up to 90 to 100% occupants. That has been traditionally over the historical data that we have been operating, 90 to 100%. Sometimes there is overbookings, you know. But right now, as you can see, there is loss.
The 96-room hotel is now at only 35% occupancy, mainly filled by local customers.
We are operating with very minimum staff. The number of staff, we have helped them, some of them, to take accumulated leaves. And the leave we are also still paying, we are struggling to pay. But of course the expenses are high. So at this time, usually compared to this year, it is a major challenge for us to operate the business.
With no expected earnings from the summit, the hotel is forced to cut costs all round. This hotel has decided to re-strategize on its pricing and giving discounts up to about 75% of the original prices. For example, this room on a normal day would cost $280, but now it is currently going for $80. Over 160 hotels in the capital, Addis Ababa, are reeling from the absence of the summit.
Likely it's not happening here. It will be very frustrating. Even the employees will not get beside the salary, will not get the service that they used to get, and even the total picture of this country will not be the same as before. This is the biggest frustration we have.
The Ethiopian government made available over $55 million last year at low interest rates for the hotel industry. Majority of the hotels took the loans and are expected to start repaying in June this year. But the African Union is confident that a virtual summit will still be as effective as previous physical meetings, especially when it comes to policies.
Yes, we can do many important things, just like the other nations in the world when it comes to examples like the European Union or the G10, etc. All of them, they have taken already these measures just to keep the people safe, and as well as delivering meaningful and good decisions to their people.
The African Union Commission remains out of bounds to visitors. Only essential staff are allowed into the compound. And hoteliers like Sam hope that after about 6 months, business will return to normal and his rooms will be filled with visitors again.
When we return, international news. Trump's second impeachment trial begins today. And later, sport. Adamawa United players plead with State Governor Amadou Fintiri over Bismarck welfare package.
You are watching ANN. Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, African News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. The historic second impeachment trial of U.S. former President Donald Trump begins in Washington today. His alleged crimes will be debated and a vote taken in the end whether to convict him. Already, Republicans have been questioning the constitutionality of prosecuting a former president whom Democrats are charging with inciting the deadly Capitol siege. Democrats want to hold the former president accountable for his part in instigating the violence that ensued during the U.S. Capitol breach, in which 5 persons were killed, including a woman shot inside the Capitol building and a police officer who died the next day from injuries. Republicans, on the other hand, want the whole process over as fast as possible.
Republicans will spend much of this trial arguing that there's a reason for that this is outside the bounds of the Constitution, that this is not a precedent that should be set. They really feel like this is a former president at this point, someone who's a private citizen and should no longer be subject to this process. There is some precedent for this happening with judges, not with a president before, but Democrats will argue that this is well within the bounds. They have legal scholars that argue their vantage point of this as well. And they also will argue that this is necessary.
Trump is the first president to be twice impeached and the only one to face trial after leaving the White House. He's being charged with 1 count of incitement of insurrection. 18 persons have died and more than 200 are still missing after a glacial break in India's Uttarakhand's Chamoli district. The break triggered an avalanche and massive flooding on Sunday morning. Thousands have been evacuated. Houses and a nearby power project have been damaged. The burst glacier also swept away roads and forced authorities to evacuate villages. National and state disaster response teams have been deployed. The Army has sent 6 columns, while the Navy has assigned 7 diving teams. At least 30 persons are reported trapped in a tunnel about 2.5 kilometers long. Rescue teams worked through the night and has continued efforts to save them. Low temperature, mud and debris in the tunnel pose major challenges for rescuers. As Russia continues COVID-19 vaccinations with its Sputnik V vaccine, some regions in the country are considering issuing vaccination passports to those who have received the jabs to allow more freedom. Correspondent Stuart Smith reports.
With mass vaccination underway in Russia, those who have received a jab can breathe a little easier. They're given certificates as evidence they've been vaccinated. Some parts of the country are considering using the paperwork to exempt the inoculated from certain COVID-19 restrictions.
I don't want it to be discrimination of any sort, but I think it can be useful when you cross borders, for example, when you travel abroad.
I think the idea in itself is not a bad one, but I fear that many people will be against it. But I'm for it in principle.
If there was a certificate that showed I had been vaccinated and that allowed some relaxation, it would let me move around more easily during the pandemic, but that's all.
Proposals range from unlocking bus discounts, allowing gatherings, and returning the inoculated to office work. But experts say not only would exemptions be difficult to enforce, it's simply too early to let our guard down.
We really cannot guarantee that people who get vaccination actually get immunity. People who are vaccinated might get infection. They might also multiply infection and carry it to other people who have not been vaccinated.
Another challenge that Russia faces is low uptake. Recent polling suggests that 58% of Russians are unwilling to get vaccinated. Proponents of vaccination passports say they would be an added incentive for skeptics.
While some regions are introducing vaccine passports, national leaders have expressed more reluctance. Deputy Prime Minister Tatiana Golikova says vaccination should always be voluntary, without any undue pressure. But motivating people to get inoculated remains a difficult task.
UK officials are testing door-to-door in efforts to identify the new coronavirus variants discovered in South Africa. They hope to be able to stem the spread of the variants that is set to spread 70% faster.
In Maidstone in Kent, authorities are trying to hunt down the variant of COVID-19 first identified in South Africa.
Good afternoon. I understand you've got a dog. We're doing the COVID testing for the new strain for Vi. Are you interested in taking them? Yes. Yeah. Can I ask how many are in the house over 6?
From street to street and door to door, police, firefighters and volunteers are dropping off home testing kits.
This is probably the worst crisis to hit the communities in the UK for many generations, and almost exclusively the residents have been fantastic. They're eager to have the test done, they're eager to help, and they're eager to find out how far it has spread.
8 operations like this are taking place in neighbourhoods, including parts of London, Kent and Surrey. The aim is to get 10,000 test results in each district to find out how far the variant has spread. Sheila Bolt and her husband have received their first dose of the Pfizer vaccine and support the so-called surge testing that's underway.
I think it's a very good thing, and I think it's a shame that they can't do it everywhere throughout the country so that they can trace where this is spreading, because obviously everyone's scared stiff they're going to get it, especially at our age.
Meanwhile, the UK has launched a study looking into whether you can give a different vaccine for the first and second dose. The British government has already decided to delay the second jab for up to 3 months to vaccinate as many people as possible in the first round. But for Tracy and her neighbours in Maidstone, there could be many more weeks or months of lockdown ahead. And it's taking its toll.
I think it's harder because January's a blue time anyway. Nobody had the Christmas with their family that they hoped that they would have. There doesn't seem to be a light.
The government says there is a light, vaccines. But here in Kent, it's a dim light indeed.
Up next, sport. Adamawa United players plead with State Governor Amadou Fintiri over business welfare package. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sports, Adamawa United players have cried out to Governor Amadou Umaru Fintiri to help with their club's poor welfare package. The players complained they are still paid as little as 50,000 naira. This is against the welfare package instituted by the league management company, which stipulates that least paid NPFL player should receive 150,000 naira. The players saying they are, quote, dying in silence, end quote. The Qatari 2022 World Cup organizers have insisted the matches will be staged in stadiums operating at 100% capacity. Organizers of this year's rescheduled Olympics have insisted their tournaments will go ahead. If the Olympics fail, the 2022 World Cup being staged in the Middle East for the first time will be the next major global sporting event to face the scrutiny of its virus strategy and safety plans. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a great evening.